Doncaster, a town where life usually moves at a steady pace. But on the 21st of January, 2021, its streets became a battleground. In broad daylight, 20-year-old Lewis Williams was gunned down in a ruthless execution, a violent act that sent shockwaves through the community. This wasn't a random attack. It was a planned hit, fueled by a deadly gang feud. A homemade slam gun was fired, leaving Williams fatally wounded at the scene. The killers sped away, but they wouldn't be free for long. What led to this brutal act? How did social media fuel the fire? And what happened to those responsible? Stay with us as we break down the shocking details of the murder of Lewis Williams. Before we dive in, don't forget to like this video if you appreciate deep investigative crime stories. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an episode. And let us know in the comments, what do you think is the real reason behind the rise in gang violence in the UK? Lewis Williams was just 20 years old at the time of his death, a young man with his whole life ahead of him. He grew up in Doncaster, a town known more for its quiet communities than for gang-related violence. But in recent years, tensions between rival groups had started to rise. Lewis was no stranger to these conflicts. While some reports suggest he had links to gang activity, he was also known as a loyal friend and someone who had a presence in his local area. At the time of his death, he was navigating the challenges of early adulthood, balancing personal relationships and the realities of the environment around him. His family, devastated by his loss, later described him as someone who had people who cared about him. A young man who, despite his connections, didn't deserve such a brutal end. What Lewis didn't know was that, in the days leading up to his death, a plan had already been set in motion. A plan that would see him executed in broad daylight. The tensions that led to Lewis Williams' murder had been growing for months, rooted in gang rivalries and personal conflicts. Williams had been involved in an ongoing dispute with Taylor Meanley, a 17-year-old who had links to local gang activity. The hostility between them had escalated, with both sides engaging in verbal and physical altercations. One of the key events that intensified this feud was an assault on Taylor Meanley. In the weeks leading up to the murder, Meanley had been attacked, an incident that left him humiliated and seeking revenge. Whether or not Lewis Williams was directly responsible didn't matter. Meanley believed he was involved. Fueled by anger, Meanley and three others, Jack Parks, Joe Anderton, and Arlind Nika, decided to take action. This wasn't just about retaliation, it was about sending a message. They armed themselves with a homemade slam gun, an improvised but deadly weapon, and set their sights on Williams. On January 21st, 2021, they put their plan into motion. Driving through Doncaster in a Jaguar, they began searching for their target. When they finally spotted Lewis Williams on Barnsley Road, there was no turning back. At approximately 4:26 p.m, the quiet of Wath Road in Mexborough, Doncaster, was shattered by a violent act that would leave a community in shock. Lewis Williams, a 20-year-old local man, was the target of a drive-by shooting, a calculated attack stemming from escalating gang rivalries. Earlier that day, four individuals, Jack Parks, 21, Joe Anderton, 18, Taylor Meanley, who was 17 at the time, and Arlind Nika, 16, convened with a singular, deadly purpose. Their plan, to execute Williams, whom they associated with a rival gang, the Pittsmore Shotter Boys. They were armed with a homemade slam gun, an improvised firearm known for its crude yet lethal capabilities. They set their plan into motion. The group convened at a BP service station in Goldthorpe before embarking on their fatal mission. They travelled in the Jaguar to Wath Road, Mexborough, where they identified Williams near a farm food store. In a chilling display of premeditation, the Jaguar made an initial pass by Williams before turning around for a second approach. As they drew alongside him, Meanley fired a homemade shotgun, fatally striking Williams in the neck. The attack was swift, leaving Williams with catastrophic injuries. Despite the rapid response of emergency services, he was pronounced dead at the scene. Immediately following the shooting, the assailants fled the area, abandoning and later setting fire to the Jaguar in Bolton-upon-Dearne to destroy evidence. The murder of Lewis Williams sent shockwaves through the community, prompting an intensive investigation by South Yorkshire Police. The use of a homemade firearm and the involvement of teenagers in such a violent act brought to the forefront concerns about youth involvement in gang culture and the accessibility of illegal weapons. This tragic event not only claimed the life of a young man, but also served as a grim reminder of the destructive path that gang affiliations and violent rivalries can lead to. As the sun set on January 11th, 2021, Doncaster was left shaken by the brutal daylight execution of Lewis Williams. Within minutes of the attack, emergency services flooded Wath Road, Mexborough, but it was already too late. Lewis had succumbed to his injuries at the scene. What followed was an intense police investigation that would unravel a shocking web of gang violence and calculated revenge. South Yorkshire Police wasted no time in securing the crime scene. Officers quickly cordoned off the area, ensuring that no evidence was disturbed. Forensic teams combed through every inch of Wath Road, recovering ballistic evidence that would later prove crucial in court. Witnesses in the area were questioned, and CCTV footage from nearby businesses was seized. One thing became clear. This was a targeted attack, not a random act of violence. But the breakthrough came when detectives identified the getaway vehicle, a light blue Jaguar. CCTV had captured the car circling the area before the shooting and speeding away just moments after the gunfire. The vehicle was later found abandoned and torched in Bolton-upon-Dearne, a clear attempt to destroy any trace of evidence. But investigators weren't about to let that stop them. With mounting pressure, detectives pieced together the movements of the killers. Phone records, witness statements, and forensic analysis pointed to 4 key suspects: Taylor Meanley, Jack Parks, Joe Anderton, and Arlene Nika. Each of them played a role in the execution, and none of them had expected the police to close in so quickly. On January 15, 2021, police made their first arrest. Jack Parks was taken into custody during a raid in Mexborough. Just 2 days later, on January 17th, Joe Anderton was arrested in Doncaster. Then, on January 20th, officers carried out simultaneous raids. Taylor Meanley was arrested in Mexborough, while Arlene Nika was tracked down in London. The case was moving fast, and the killers had nowhere left to hide. With all 4 in custody, forensic teams worked to connect them to the crime. The murder weapon, a homemade slam gun, was recovered and matched to the fatal shot. Further analysis of the Jaguar revealed traces of the suspect's DNA. But perhaps the most damning evidence came from their own conversations. Phone records and social media messages showed clear discussions of their plan to take out Lewis Williams. The weight of the evidence was undeniable. Within weeks, all 4 were charged with murder and possession of a firearm with intent to endanger life. But the investigation was only the beginning. What followed in the courtroom would determine whether justice would be served. What do you think about gang culture in the UK? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more real crime stories. After weeks of meticulous investigation and arrest, it was time for justice to be served. On September 1st, 2021, the trial of Taylor Meanley, Jack Parks, Joe Anderton, and Arlene Nika began at Sheffield Crown Court. From the very start, prosecutors laid out a chilling case, detailing how the 4 young men had conspired to kill Williams in cold blood. They presented CCTV footage showing the light blue Jaguar circling Wath Road moments before the shooting, and revealed phone records proving that the suspects had been in constant communication before and after the attack. But perhaps the most damning evidence was the murder weapon itself, a homemade slam gun which had been recovered and forensically linked to the crime. The prosecution painted a picture of premeditated murder. The group had not only sought out Williams, they had armed themselves, planned their movements, and carried out the attack in broad daylight with zero hesitation. Witness statements, forensic analysis, and digital evidence all pointed to one conclusion. This was an execution, not a random attack. The defense team scrambled to shift the narrative. Taylor Meanley, the one who fired the fatal shot, claimed he thought the homemade firearm wouldn't discharge live ammunition. He insisted that he never intended to kill Williams, but the prosecution quickly shut this down. They demonstrated the devastating force of the weapon, proving that it was fully capable of lethal damage, and this was backed by their social media chats that clearly showed their intentions. The jury was left with no doubt. This was no accident. After weeks of testimony, on October 15, 2021, the jury returned with their verdicts. Taylor Meanley and Jack Parks were found guilty of murder. Joe Anderton and Arlind Nika were found guilty of manslaughter. All four were also convicted of possessing a firearm with intent to endanger life. 2 weeks later, on October 29, 2021, sentencing was handed down. Meanley and Parks received life sentences, with a minimum of 27 years before parole. Anderton and Nika were sentenced to 12 years each in detention. The murder of Lewis Williams wasn't just another crime statistic. It was a tragic example of how gang rivalries, social media taunts, and a thirst for revenge can lead to deadly consequences. A 20-year-old man lost his life in broad daylight, and 4 young men threw away their futures for a moment of power that ultimately meant nothing. For Lewis's family, the pain of his loss will never fade. No sentence, no conviction, and no courtroom verdict can bring him back. While his killers will spend decades behind bars, the harsh reality is that gang-related violence continues to destroy lives across the UK. Young men, some barely out of their teens, are being lured into a lifestyle that offers them nothing but prison or death. But the question remains, how do we stop this? More police patrols? Stricter laws on illegal weapons? Or does the real solution start at home, in schools, in communities, and in providing young people with better opportunities before they even consider stepping into this world? One thing is clear: Lewis Williams' death was avoidable. And until serious action is taken to tackle gang culture at its roots, we may continue to see tragic cases just like this one. What do you think is the real solution to stopping gang violence? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more real crime stories.